Welcome back to Ivy Unleashed. Today is so fun. Brooke and I are like, this could not be better timing for our business, for our life, for our mindset. We are so excited to welcome Keala Kanae. Welcome to Ivy Unleashed, and thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the time.
We love a person that can help you rewire the brain. We love talking about the brain, how we talk to ourselves, our values. You know, it dictates how we show up in the world, how much we procrastinate, what we put our time and efforts towards. And that is exactly what you talk about. You get on stages for it. You coach people about this and really help people transform their lives. So we're excited to dig into everything. We have our own personal questions that we want to ask you. But really first, we want to dig into integrative neural conditioning, what that means, and how we can use it to benefit ourselves, our personal lives, and our business.
Okay, so integrative neural conditioning is our term that we use for the process through which we help our clients change their brain. Okay, so if you don't mind, let me step back for a moment so I can add some context, which will make the content make more sense. So, as you know, like today, I mean, we work with entrepreneurs, high achievers, folks that have big dreams, big goals. They really want to level up their life, and they're up to something big. They want to play full out, but they kind of also keep getting in their own way. Procrastination, self-sabotage, imposter syndrome, whatever it is. And they've typically, read the self-help books. They've done the big name guru seminars. They've done the positive thinking, the affirmations, the cold plunges, the morning routines, and they still find themselves not quite fulfilling that potential, and what we do is we help those people break free from some of those self-defeating behaviors without hocus pocus or woo-woo stuff. Like, not that I would say I'm half woo. I'm like one woo.
We say the same thing. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
We're down with two. We're down with two though.
I can go there for sure. I can both be a skeptic and a mystic. But yeah, so we really rely on like science-backed, research-based approaches, which we've packaged as integrative neural conditioning. We 100% guarantee the work. And the reality is that like I didn't always start there, right? Like I was one of those people like for over a decade as a wannabe entrepreneur. I struggled with my own self-defeating behaviors, and I really didn't understand where that stuff came from. And I'd be happy to talk about some of the things that I went through in life that kind of led me to this, to like discovering this, because I had to, I was searching for solutions to my own problems. And then that just took me down a rabbit hole, and it's been like my number one fascination ever since. So integrative neural conditioning, when we are talking about changing our outcomes, ultimately what we're talking about is changing our behaviors. If we're talking about changing our behaviors, really what we're talking about is changing our thinking, because our thinking is our behaviors are a byproduct of our thinking. If we're talking about changing our thinking, what we're really talking about is changing our unconscious programming, right? So we know that 95% of all of our thoughts are happening unconsciously. Dr. Zaltman from Harvard is one of the first to really prove this. And so when we're talking about changing our unconscious thinking, what we're really talking about is changing our neural pathways in the brain. So, neuroplasticity, creating new neural networks, this sort of thing. So that happens in a few different phases. One that we take people through is like we create a lot of, through experiential learning, we want to create a lot of aha moments for our clients. So these are the moments where you discover something about yourself, a belief about yourself, a belief that you formulated about the world around you that's likely, some of those are serving you and some of those might be holding you back. So that is called a gamma burst. So a gamma burst is like an electrical charge takes place in the brain. It's measured at about 30 to 100 hertz. And it's when distant portions of the brain connect for likely the first time. So we know we have a gamma burst because typically what happens is we'll say, I see it now. It's the aha moment. It's like, oh, I get it. Oh, I discovered it. Oh, I see how that's working. Oh, I can see how that's playing out in my life. Those are gamma bursts. When we have those moments, it opens a window in the mind or in the brain for us to create neuroplasticity, meaning the brain now becomes more malleable to change. It hasn't changed, and oftentimes people get those two things confused. They think like, oh, I just had this discovery. Everything's going to be different now. Not really. So it opens the window to neuroplasticity. When the brain is neuroplastic, we have a massive opportunity to change what's happening in the brain. Oftentimes, one way to do this is, things like repetition. Affirmations are a common form of repetition. Meditation can be a great way to create repetition. But what we also know about the brain is that it's an adaptation survival tool. So the greater the stress that it's under, the higher the stakes that it's exposed to, the faster it adapts and changes. And so that's why in our classes, everything that we do is experiential learning. So our online class, there's no note taking. You can take notes. We don't ban it or anything, but it's just, we tell people right up front, you're probably not going to take notes. You're going to play games. You're going to be in small group exercises. You're going to be, doing like, small group shares. Like, it's just a lot of interactive components. And then at our advanced classes, which are retreats, we take people through a set of experiences that, again, it capitalizes on the neuroplasticity of the brain. It's, high stakes games, nothing that's, unsafe or anything. And through these experiences, we're able to change and adapt the brain more quickly and more permanently than things like repetition, than, the common like motivational seminars. I'm sure I've been to motivational seminars, stand on a chair, beat your chest, and then 3 days later on a Wednesday, you're pulling into the garage and you can't remember what the heck was that thing. So it's our process for taking people through becoming aware of what's keeping them stuck, changing those neural pathways, and allowing those changes to be permanent and lasting. It's the short version.
What I'm hearing is that you provide the integration, where a lot of these motivational seminars, you come home and you're like, oh, there's the motivation. It's already gone. Exactly what you just said. That experiential learning. Will you give an example of one of those experiences, what that looks like? Just give people a little taste.
One example is, one of our advanced classes. So one of the things that people often experience or holds them back is fear. We all know that, right? One of the things that we want to do at our advanced classes is help people turn their fear into fuel. So instead of coming up against fear and using it as a sign to back down, which is a very common thing that the brain is trained to do. Let me step back for just a moment. Most of our unconscious programming happens between 0 and 7 or 8 years old. Okay. So from 0 to 7, we operate at the theta brainwave. That's the same brainwave as hypnosis. So children, this is why we say that children are like, their mind is like a sponge. They learn so quickly, right? That's why, because they don't have a filter or a firewall to protect like what's going in. And that's why their mind is like a sponge. Now, because there's always a perfect balance of opposites in the universe, there's going to be a drawback to that too. The drawback is that they don't have a rational or logical mind to help, filter the world around them. In other words, mom and dad break up. I don't see dad anymore, or I don't see dad as often. Maybe dad doesn't love me. I'm not lovable. They don't have a rational brain to say like, no, mom and dad just don't communicate well. They're better off apart, and I'm going to be happier and in a better, more stable environment as a result. Like, they can't think about that, right? So I say all that to say that the brain naturally, because we're at such a young age, when it experiences fear, it wants us to stop and step back from that fear. You want to step back from the ledge at 7 years old, not jump off of it, right? But as entrepreneurs, we got to jump off that ledge, no parachute. We got to build the plane on the way down, as you know. And so we have to develop a different relationship with fear. So one example of an exercise is something we call the edge. So we'll take people up on and for some listeners, this might sound crazy, and I promise you it's 100% safe. We'll take people on a ledge. It's about 60 feet in the air. Okay, you get up on a platform. You climb up, a ladder.
Oh God.
Depending on what location we're doing it at, we have for some it's a trail. And you get up to this platform, 60 feet above the ground, You are met at the top with a facilitator. They kind of ask you some questions. And really what we're doing in that exercise in the conversation is we're working through, what does this edge represent for you? So it's not about, because it's not about the edge. It's not about, the ledge that you're about to dangle off of. It's about what meaning that you're assigning to it, because that's how we create our programming. We have an emotional experience, and from that emotional experience, we create a belief about ourselves or the world around us, and typically that story runs our life from that moment forward, right? So mom and dad left, or mom and dad split, dad doesn't love me, I'm not lovable. So we want to create new programming with a similar formula. What does this represent to you? You're about to have this emotional experience. What do you want this to mean about you, yourself, and the world around you, and your life going forward? That's what we're teeing up. Then eventually we strap that person in. So they're wearing a harness around their waist.
My heart is just beating.
Yeah. We hook them in. And so imagine that exactly on the opposite side of your back from where your belt buckle would sit is another buckle. And we strap you into that. And now you're encouraged to walk over to the edge of the ledge and just slowly lean out. So you know that you are strapped in. You know that you're safe. You've seen it all happen. But when it's you, the ledge, and 60 feet to the ground, your brain is in hyper survival mode. Even though you consciously know, your subconscious, that amygdala portion of the brain, the subcortical portion of the brain, is trying to prevent you from moving forward because of it's the survival mechanism. Now think about how many analogies we have for that in our own life, where we know that we are, we know that we're safe. We know that, we can be very confident, we can be very certain, we can be very clear about like who I am, why I'm here, what I'm here to do. I really believe in myself. And then we come up against some big challenge and all that goes out the window and we're like, oh my God, am I going to be able to pay the bills next month? What if I can't make payroll next week? And so can you see the symbolism there?
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
No, so eventually what we're doing is we're getting them to push past that fear and to rely on their prefrontal cortex more than their subcortical brain, which, allows them to change the relationship they have with fear such that fear becomes a sign to move forward versus a sign to step back. That makes sense.
Absolutely. And our listeners, a lot of them are women in their like 30s, 40s, that kind of age range. And I'm thinking about them and how this might apply to them if they aren't an entrepreneur, right? There's so many scary things. It doesn't have to be business, that it's showing up. It's losing the weight, right? It's starting the business. It's being the type of parent you want to be when it's very different than someone else, or just kind of stepping out of the box, whatever that might look like. There's so many scenarios I can think of that it doesn't have to be business. I mean, I'm thinking of like success and those types of things too, but I think this shows up in so many ways where I just keep thinking about authenticity, right? Of just being who you actually are and stepping into that and knowing yourself and knowing your values and knowing what that next chapter looks like for you. Because I think so many of us are right on like the edge of the next chapter of, we all want more success or more intimacy or more happiness or more fulfillment, whatever it is. And I like how you talk about when you're going for those things is not just understanding what the success could be, but also knowing what the drawbacks are, like knowing both of those things and that balance. Can you kind of talk about the importance of knowing, like, if I do lose this weight, what the drawbacks would be and why it's important to also acknowledge and accept those things too?
Okay, we are treading into deep water.
Welcome to Ivy Unleashed.
Yes, I like it. Okay. So there's several things that you mentioned that are, deep wisdom. Number one, you mentioned that there's lots of women listening who might not be entrepreneurs. Ultimately, what we're training people to do is be a leader in their life. And the way that we define leadership is that every human being has a calling. Leaders are the ones with the courage to answer the call. Leaders go first. They're not waiting for permission. as you can see, like that has nothing to do with purely entrepreneurship. You also mentioned getting back to the authentic self and how that relates to values. That's axiology. I can go, we spend a lot of time on that, and I would love to talk about like getting back to the authentic self. And then you asked about the benefit of knowing the drawbacks to something. Deep question. So I'll share this. I'll share this through a story. I think is like a great way to help this land. Recently, last year, so part of my story is I went from working in a coffee shop, minimum wage, living in my mom's spare bedroom, 500 credit score, to discovering the stuff that we're talking about here, kind of using it to help weaponize my mind, so to speak. And I went on to build a business that did over 140 million in sales over the last 8 years or so. And then I exited that company last year. And I transitioned to what we're talking about here so I can spend the rest of my life sharing this stuff, because I find this stuff to be the most inspirational, powerful stuff that I do. And so last year, as we're leading up to me exiting the previous company and transitioning to this company, I'm thinking about all of the benefits, right? Like I'm excited about it. I've been wanting to do it for years. I am, I'm really inspired about this work. I have seen so many lives change through this work. It's kind of something that we've been doing behind the scenes, on the back end of my previous company for years, but we've never really made it like the focal point of what we do. So I'm like, I'm over talking about affiliate marketing and, online marketing and all this stuff that we used to teach. And so I'm so excited about making this transition. Now, we make that transition October 31st, 2024. Deal is done, contract signed, November 1, I am CEO full-time of Inspirian. And it hits me, right? I mean, I just land in that seat and I'm like, oh my God, what did I do? Did I what if I can't figure out how to get customers? I've never advertised this type of product before. I've never had to sell to this kind of an avatar before. Who is my average customer actually? What are their demographics? Where are they at online? Are they on Facebook? Are they on Instagram? Where do I advertise to find these people? What are they searching for on the internet? What if I don't figure out how to get these folks? I leveraged everything that I own in order to have the capital to build this business. That means I could go bankrupt and lose everything. What if I end up living in my mom's spare bedroom again? What's going to happen? And I'm just like, like the reality of it sets in, right? Mm-hmm. And I start to experience some of that self-doubt, imposter syndrome. Can I do this? Will I figure it out in time? This sort of thing. And I want to be clear about this with listeners, right? Because I think that there's a lot of rhetoric, in my experience in the industry, wherein, some people pretend like they've got it all figured out. And the reality is we never figure it out, right? Like I hope that I always experience imposter syndrome, because it's a great sign that I'm doing something magnificent with my life that challenges my threshold of possibility, right? I hope every person continues to experience it. All we promise in our curriculum is that we give you tools to work through it, right? So that it doesn't stop you. Mm-hmm. So for about 6 weeks or so, I am like, what do I do? How do I figure this out? Like, I'm kind of going back to the drawing board. I'm meeting with my team. I'm talking to my fiance about I think we should sell our house, just to minimize our expenses, give us more runway, yada, yada, all these things. And I end up on a call with my CFO, and we're talking, and I'm asking them, my CFO and my financial manager, and I'm like, what if I go bankrupt though? What do we do then? And my CFO, finally, he just speaks up in the middle of the meeting and he goes, Keala, what if it works? He's like, I've watched you for the last 8 years go through all this stuff. And like, now for the last 2 conversations we've had, all you want to talk about is like, what if it doesn't work? He's like, I would bet on you, man. Like, when are you going to bet on yourself? And I was like, Jesus. So I hang up thank God I keep great people around me. So I get off that call and I'm like, he's right. What's going on with me? So let's take a step back, because there's a perfect balance in the universe, right? So in physics, we can observe that in any closed system, which the universe would be a closed system, there is ultimately equanimity, equilibrium, or homeostasis. So for every benefit, there's a drawback. For every drawback, a benefit. For every price, there's a payoff. As human beings, though, we tend to see one side without the other because we learn through contrast. Without contrast, we can't learn. So we know hot because we know cold. We know up because we know down. We know left because we know right. Right? So contrast is how we learn. In order to make decisions, we have to experience contrast. So if you rewind, when I'm going into that transition to becoming this, the CEO of Inspirion, I'm seeing all of the benefits and none of the drawbacks. Right. I'm seeing like all of the upside of like, oh yes, I can't wait till I don't have to talk about this, affiliate marketing stuff anymore. And, I get to do this thing that I really love doing. And I'm going to, grow this company and, have these experiences and build out this ranch and all these things. And because the mind will eventually figure out balance, when I actually take the seat of the CEO, I start to see the other side, the drawbacks, the risks that I took, the danger that's ahead, the possibility of failing, what that could look like. And we see this, here's a very simple version that everyone can relate to. When we fall in love with somebody, when we hit the infatuation stage, when we first start dating and we're like, oh my God, they finished my sentences, No, you hang up. No, you hang up. No, you hang up first. No, you hang up, right? If we're like so in love. And then, a year later we move in together and one morning we wake up and we're like, who the hell is this person? Why am I with them? What was I thinking? It's the mind having to find balance. And so when we operate from the polarized perspective, meaning we see benefits without drawbacks, upsides without downside, we can make decisions faster and we close ourselves off to deeper intuition. So when we balance the mind, we bring the world into balance, we bring our perspectives into balance, our perceptions into balance, we open the connection between, and this is where we go one woo. Not quite woo-woo. We open the connection between the mind and the heart, and we can, tap into our authentic selves and, and ask ourselves, like, what would I love to do?
Ooh.
What would I love my life to look like? What would I love the future to unfold for me? When we're polarized and we see one side with the other side, we're using our intelligence rather than our intuition. Both serve. One comes from authentic self. The other comes from the self that we design to fit into the world.
So are you saying when you have a decision to make, say leave the company, whatever it may be, start dating the dude, whatever, marry the man, you see both sides and then you ask yourself that powerful question of what do I want? What am I drawn towards? So you're kind of weighing both sides, or how does this actually, how do you use this in your benefit to open your heart?
Yes. Okay. So beautiful question. In 2018, I was going through a pretty brutal partnership breakup. So me and my business partner, we had grown the company. And so we launched at the very end of 2016, right after Thanksgiving. We scaled to $1 million a month in 4 months. We had, just shy of $20 million our first year by the end of 2017, almost 60 employees. Going into 2018, we're continuing to grow, but he and I are also continuing to grow apart. So we start going through this kind of ugly partnership breakup. And in the process, there's a few things like over the previous couple of years, I'd kind of learned a few things about, like, one, and I know that this is kind of like a privileged stance, right? But like, money's not going to make me any happier. I had learned that, like I had I was poor most of my life. Then I had money, thought it would make me happy, realized that brought me zero happiness. In fact, I'm a bit more stressed out now.
Maybe a little bit of happiness when you got to move out of the house of your parents, right? A little bit of happiness when like you got to like get your first place, but then it hits a threshold, I'm assuming.
It definitely, having money creates more opportunities. We have more choices, but not necessarily more fulfillment, because fulfillment comes from filling full our values. You mentioned values earlier. So it can buy experiences that might give temporary, dopamine, and some endorphins, but it won't create, like, filling my bank account and filling my soul are two different things.
Ooh, okay.
That's good.
Sweet, I got a woo out of this. Can we end the podcast now?
Yep.
I think I just ended on
This is Gold Ivy signing off. Just kidding.
No. Okay, so I'm going through this challenge with my business partner, and I realize, like, money's not going to make me happier. So what am I fighting this for? And so the question becomes, so in the process, he had reached out to me and said, hey, listen, if you're willing to walk away, I'll pay you this much. So I got on, I shared that with a couple of business coaches that I knew, business veterans, and even a friend of mine who's a psychologist. And all of them kind of said the same thing. Keala, the company is not worth that much. That's a ridiculous number. If he's really willing to pay you that, you should take it and go. And on the other side of that, I'm at this a bit of a war with myself, because I also feel like, well, but I've put so much time and energy into this. It was my face on the front of the business. So I feel like, I've made the promises to the team members, to the customers and whatnot. And so there's a bit of a internal battle between the logical, rational side of me that says, like, take the money and go. He's making you a ridiculous offer. And the rather emotional side of me, which is like, but I feel like I owe these people something because I made them a promise, And so I call up one of my buddies who's a coach, and we work on this process that I'm sharing with you. And so we start out with this. First, law of reflection. Everything we judge in others is what we disown about ourselves. So he asked me, okay, so what are you judging about so-and-so, the partner, that has you so charged up about this? And so basically I start listing out the characteristics and traits, like lazy, dishonest, selfish, yada, yada. And then we go through this list, and he's like, all right, so where have you expressed all of those traits? In what form have you been that person? And I'm literally going through this list and owning all the things that I'm judging about the other person. I'm owning that I also express those things. This is, by the way, law of conservation of energy. Like, we know, right, that energy can't be created or destroyed. It only transforms, right? So that's at the macro level, true across the universe. At the micro level, what that means is every characteristic or trait that can exist in a human being does exist in a human being. There's roughly 4,600 characteristics and traits of a human being in the Oxford Dictionary, and we all have all of them. We just express them in our own form. So what my coach is asking me to do in that example is own those traits so that I am not charged up. Like, I'm not acting from the amygdala. I'm not acting from emotion. I'm not acting from, like, anger, but I can act from a place of balance. And think about this for a moment. Like, the beauty of this is that if what we judge about others is what we disown about ourselves, or in other words, reject about ourselves, how can we love ourselves if we're disowning parts of ourselves? And so what the beauty of this is like, my partner, by showing up in the way that he's showing up, which is creating these judgments and charges inside of me, he is also, because of the beautiful divinity of the universe, giving me the opportunity to love myself more wholly, because he's bringing to my awareness the parts of myself that I've disowned. So I'm started asking all these questions, and I'm discovering, like, everything I'm judging about him, I also I've expressed these characteristics and traits. Then my my coach asks me, okay, and by the way, like I go through that until there's a tear in my eye and I can realize like, in Hinduism, there's the peak of enlightenment is a term called tatwamasi, which means I am that thou art, that we can see ourselves in everything outside of us, right? The law of reflection. And so there's a moment where I'm getting a tear in my eye and I realize like I am the same as the person that I'm in this battle against. Mm-hmm. Then my coach asks, okay, so now what are all of the, like, what are the, which are you leaning towards? Are you leaning towards keeping the company or selling the company? Like, I'm really leaning towards keeping the company. He goes, okay, so what are the drawbacks of keeping the company? And now we're going through this whole list of like all the different, like, I'm going to have to rebrand. I'm going to have to let a bunch of people go. There's going to be some financial challenges. I have no idea how much it's going to cost me. Da 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 da. We're going through this whole list. And he's like, all right. And so if you sell the company, because you're seeing more drawbacks and benefits, what are the benefits of that? So I'm like, well, I would get this money. I would be able to walk away from these responsibilities. I would not have these liabilities. Da, da, da. And we go through all of that. And then at the end, he says, okay, so, and can you see that there's just as many benefits and drawbacks to leaving and just as many benefits and drawbacks to staying? Mm-hmm. I was like, yeah. And he goes, so now what do you want to do? Like from your heart. And I said, this is the work that I want to do in the world. And so I'm not fighting for the company. I'm actually fighting for my mission, like myself, my purpose. And that is something worth fighting for. So that's the beauty of like the difference between intuition and intelligence, if that makes sense.
And if you're watching, you can see that Keala's getting emotional thinking about this and talking about this, which I love because it means it's like you're speaking to your soul right now. I feel like you're talking to like your like inner child, your innermost truth right now. And can you just talk about why that's making you so emotional right now?
There is a quote. I'm probably going to bastardize it just a little bit. But James Michner, the master in the art of living, makes little distinction between his work and his play, his labor and his leisure, his mind and his body. He hardly knows which is which. I think I'm getting pretty close to that one. That's to have the opportunity to wake up every day and like do what you love, right? To not know the difference between your vacation and your vocation. To inevitably face challenges, but be grateful for those challenges because you see how they serve you, right? To embrace the downsides of life with equal indifference to the degree that you embrace the upsides of life. Like, in other words, to not ride the roller coaster of life, but to just be clear about a mission that you're on, and what you want to dedicate your life to, and to not need somebody's permission to do it. Right? To not be looking to the outside world, the external world, to tell you that it's okay. To not worry about living up to society's expectations and the media's expectations and the various institutions' expectations, but to live from the center of your heart and soul. It took me a long time to get to that place, and it's the place that I like, that I operate from now. That I have the wisdom and the technology and the understanding to be able to operate from that place today. And it's the most freeing, beautiful thing that I could ever like express. Like, I don't know how to express it, right? Like, I wish I could bottle it up and give it to every person in the world.
You are right now, though. What you're saying is seeing it on you, I can feel it from you. It's like exuding through the computer screen at us, and it's so beautiful. And by you, like I like that you keep saying you don't need permission, because I do feel like you're kind of giving people permission from the fact that you did it. Like you made the decision to go after this. And I think sometimes we need an example, not totally permission, but to see someone do it and to know those were your stakes. Those are big stakes and a completely different life. And you're reaping the benefits. And you said freedom or freeing. And I kept feeling that freedom too, of waking up and knowing like you can create whatever you want, but you have to know what it is that's going to fulfill you. And I think sometimes we procrastinate on that, or we think about it, but then we don't do anything about it. Or we kind of know we have that calling and it's like comes in different versions, but then we sit on it, or we wait till we feel like it's too late or whatever. And so I would love for you to speak to the person listening that is, they understand there's something really calling them, but they're procrastinating. They're sitting on it. They're not really acting on it. Like, how could someone start making some moves to have that freedom that you're currently experiencing?
Yeah, we are officially in deep water now.
We're crying. We're woo-wooing. Oh, this is a great day.
It really is.
I'm free.
I'm glad. For me, this is first thing in the morning, so I'm like really.
Baby, let's go. What a day we're gonna have.
Yeah, let's speak to that. So here's what if I told you that procrastination, imposter syndrome, self-sabotage, self-doubt, what if I told you that all of these things are actually the secret to discovering your life's purpose?
Okay.
I would say, tell me more.
That would be the contradiction to what we so often hear, right? So everything I'm about to share with you is a combination of axiology, which is the study of values, teleology, the study of purpose, and neuroscience.
Let's go.
So through the lens of axiology, we can observe that every human being has a set of values that governs their life. Okay. Now, when I say the word values, oftentimes people think of things like, hey, Cal, I know what my values are. It's honesty, integrity, fairness, justice, equality, and these sorts of things. And I understand that because those are typically, as a society, those are the kinds of values that we talk about. In reality, from an axiological perspective, those are social ideals. What I'm talking about is that every day that we wake up, there are the things that we value most in our life, down to the things that we value so little that we probably don't even think about them. Okay. So our values also dictate, and this is where this is where things get real and applicable. Our values will dictate how we use our resources. So our primary resources as human beings is time, energy, and money. However we invest our time, energy, and money will ultimately become our destiny. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Right? So when we wake up every day, we're going to invest our time, energy, and money in direct proportion to the things that we value most, to the things that we value least. So example, the thing that we value most in our life is going to get the most of our resources. And then the next thing, and then the next thing, and then the next thing. But eventually we're going to run out of resources in our day long before we run out of goals or things that we want to accomplish. Okay. So I'm going to give you a very hypothetical example because I think the best way to really share this is through like an example of a couple. And I've shared this with rooms of like thousands of people now. And this is really like the thing that helps it land. And I want to be clear. I'm going to give a very stereotypical example of a husband and wife in Western society. I'm not saying that this is what a husband's role is. I'm not saying that this is what a wife's role is. I'm not saying this is what a husband should be or what a wife should be. I'm not even saying, that they should be biologically male or female. I'm not making any of those, statements, right? I'm just trying to make a very simple explanation so that we can get to the heart of the matter. So let's say that we have a husband, and every morning that he wakes up, the first thing that he thinks about is his business goals, the projects happening in the business, that sort of thing. If he's not working on the business, he's working on being a better leader. So he's studying, to grow the business, build the organization, whatever it is. If he's not doing that, he wants to manage the family's finances so they can build financial independence. If he's not doing that, he wants to go play some golf. If he's not doing that, he'll make some time for the kids. If he's not doing that, he'll make some time for his wife.
This sounds familiar.
And then, if he keeps saying that he wants to go to the gym and get in shape, but for whatever reason, he just never quite seems to invest the time, energy, and money necessary for a long enough period of time to make that happen. Okay. Now, his wife, his counterpart, though, like she wakes up in the morning, first thing she thinks about the kids' education, the kids' health, the kids' after school programs, like she feels like their whole life revolves around the kids. And when she's not doing something that relates to the kids, then she'll make some time to do some art. She also says that she really wants to be an entrepreneur. She wants to start her own business. She wants to be financially independent, from her husband. But she's on her 6th business now. She's joined several network marketing companies, let's say. She swears that this is a thing that she wants to do, but she just never invests time, energy, and money long enough to make that manifest in her life. So both of these people, when they wake up in the morning, they both have time, energy, and money to deploy throughout their day. But the husband's is going to go to his business. The majority of it all is going to go to his business. And if he has any left over, he's going to pick up a book or go to a seminar, go to a conference or listen to a podcast to be a better leader. If he has any left, he's going to spend it, managing the family's finances and managing their financial portfolio. If he has any left, he might go play some golf. If he's got energy left, he spends some time with the kids, spends some time with the wife, but he just never quite makes it to the gym. When she wakes up in the morning, she's getting the kids ready, making breakfast, packing their lunches, taking them to school, talking to their teachers, this sort of thing. She's there when they get out of school. She's taking them to their soccer practices. She's making sure they're getting tutoring, these sorts of things. But she just never has this time, energy, or money at the end of her day after she's, taking them upstairs and tucking them in after watching Netflix together. She never has that time, energy, or money to build her business. When we're pursuing the things that are highest in our values, right, we experience symptoms. Those symptoms include diligence, fortitude, follow-through, clarity, certainty, confidence, purpose, alignment, fulfillment. When we are pursuing the things that are lower in our values, in this case, for the husband, the gym, and for her, the business, we also experience symptoms. Those symptoms will be procrastination, imposter syndrome, frustration, hesitation, self-sabotage, self-doubt, and on that list goes. And so, in other words, and what we find through axiology is you can only about the top 3 to 5 things that we value in life will we actually make manifest in our life. So, because we have a finite amount of resources, so there's only a finite amount of things that we can make come to life, right? So notice that, there's so many gurus on the internet. You see lots of, even times business gurus beating the discipline drum, right? What you need is more discipline. What you need is work harder. What you need is, work your face off and work your, ass off and stuff. And it's man, I might not be able to tell the difference between those two things at times for myself, but I'd like to keep both of them and get my goals, So, my point is, the reality is, if you look at that wife, that mom, she's extremely disciplined when it comes to taking care of those kids. She doesn't need a reminder in her calendar. She can remember their soccer games. It's in the back of her mind. It's almost intuitive. That husband, he doesn't need an accountability partner to wake him up every day and tell him to go work on his business or to manage his finances, right? When we live by our highest values, we have inspiration. The etymology of inspiration means from the spirit within. Some might call it a window into the soul. When we pursue things that are lower in our values, we need motivation. Motivation, because we lack inspiration, we need motivation. Motivation means an external force to keep us accountable to the things that we say that we want to accomplish. And so this means, and think about how beautiful this is, we are physiologically designed, biologically wired to pursue the things that are most purposeful and meaningful in our lives. Our brain is a telos, purpose seeking machine. But we also live in a world that tells us who we ought to be, need to be, supposed to be, have to be, should be, in order to earn the label successful, worthy, or enlightened. And so we go to war with ourselves, trying to pursue who we think we ought to be at the price of who we were born to be. And so when we live by our highest values, we unlock our authentic self. Our mind, our brain is designed to take us there once we know how to use it, because what good would be accomplishing a goal if it comes at the price of your soul?
I'm just going to pause there.
I don't know how to follow that up.
In.
Wow. Beautiful. Beautifully said. And it just makes you think. Like, I hope everybody is pausing, because I think that's the trickiest part, is getting people to pause to understand themselves. Like, what's the cost of not knowing your values, not knowing what it is that does light you up, and going at a speed that this world is dictating, or on a path that the world's dictating that you're not choosing? Like, I think that's why people get so sick, right? Like, they're acting out of a place or in a way that isn't their purpose, that isn't their calling. And it's like their body's screaming at them, like, take this time, like, sit down and know what you want. And I think that's the missing piece.
I mean, if you look at like Charlie Munger or Warren Buffett, I mean, these guys are in their 90s. They drink Coca-Cola and eat at McDonald's. But they are, and like, you wonder, like, I mean, obviously Charlie's not here anymore. And you wonder, like, man, they're going to outlive all of us. But if you watch their lives, like, they're very, and I don't know if you ever saw the documentary, Being Buffett. They are so clear about who they are, and they just live by their highest values, and they delegate the rest away. Can I say that that's like scientific, absolute fact or proof that we live longer when we abide by our values? Not necessarily, but we can find lots of examples of people who live to be a ripe old age, and also those people tend to like not care so much about what everybody else in the world thinks about them.
Totally.
And just truly be themselves,
Yeah, I think about stress, right? It's the number one factor of so many conditions and diseases. And when you're not living authentically to you, there's this friction, this stress.
So there's two forms of stress, right? Because there's always a balance in the universe. So there's eustress and distress. Distress is the negative form of stress. It's usually what we mean when we use the word stress. But eustress is the stress that grows you, shapes you, changes you. So when you're going to the gym and you're building muscle, you're stressing the muscle. So that's eustress. When we live by our highest values, which I call the power code, and we have a process that we take our clients through to help them discover what their power code is. When we live by our highest values, we experience eustress. When we're trying to pursue things that are that challenge our values, we experience distress. Same stimulus. It can be the same challenge, same conflict, same problem. But if we can see how it helps us, live by our values or make manifest the things we value most in our life, we will embrace the challenge. When we feel like it challenges our purpose or our calling or our mission, we experience it as distress and we want to run from the challenge. Does that make sense?
Totally. Yeah. Wow.
Man, we still have 3 segments of our show, and I feel like my mind is blown, and I have so many more questions for you, which before we get into those 3 segments, I just want people to know where to find you, because I feel like
I want 3 books from you right now to read over the week and then have my book club. I want to listen to you. I want to watch what you have. I want to go to your events. So before we get into our last 3 segments, I want everybody to know where to find you, how they can follow you to get more of you.
The best place right now, I would say, is thepowercode.com. So we have a free assessment that people can download there. The assessment is to help you identify what your unique set of values is.
Oh, cool. That's amazing.
Super cool.
So
we'll plug that.
Yeah, it's a 10 question self-assessment. It's relatively easy to do. Comes with an instructional video. When you download that, there's a 2-hour master class on the back end of that, where I walk you through like implementing it in your life. We get messages all the time from people, by the way, that attend that master class. Like, do I offer something at the end of it? Yes. Cat's out of the bag. Letting you know, I'm going to offer you something at the end of it. But we get messages all the time from people in that master class. They're like, I was in tears in your master class. Like, that master class by itself was like life-changing. And then at the end of it, we just add, like, if you want the result faster, you can work with us, but I give you the entire process, right? So it's just a do it yourself. Great. If you want us to do it with you and coach you along the way, then there's a shortcut, obviously, and that's what we offer at the end. But that's, there's a few different tools in my arsenal that I really have come to know, love, and trust and utilize over the years. But one of them that's probably the most powerful is the power code. Like, to really live, like you're talking about, from your authentic self, So
awesome. Super cool. We'll plug all that in our show notes. So the first segment is your 3 gold stars, your top 3 takeaways. And when I think about you starting with working from a coffee shop, selling a massive business, everything you've been through, the risks you've taken, what would you say 3, biggest lessons have been for you, or what you'd want to share based on your journey in life thus far?
Know your values, right? Know your values and have the fearless determination to live by those values. When the voices on the inside are clearer and louder than the voices on the outside, then you become a master of your life. Secondly, one of the greatest human illusions is that we can have one side without the other. Meaning that there's a lot of rhetoric that to be successful or enlightened means that you're always positive, never negative, always kind, never cruel, always happy, never sad, always honest, never dishonest, this sort of thing. But in 10,000 years of written human history, you can't find one person who's ever done it. Not even the deities, which I'm not saying that to disregard, anyone's beliefs. I'm saying when you read in any theology, you find that even the gods have the wrath, fury, and anger that we experience as humans. I say that to say that the reality is that we can't love ourselves if we're trying to disown one half of ourselves. So all of us serves us. If you want to experience the soul, embrace the whole of who you are. And number 3 would be that, and I know this gets said a lot, but everything is serving us. I feel like mastering life is really being able to see the divine order in the apparent chaos of life. When it feels like the road is falling out from underneath us, it's really rising up to meet us. When it feels like everything is going wrong, it's really everything going right. And wisdom is having the ability to see that beautiful divine intelligence unfolding even when life seems the most chaotic. Those would be my 3.
They are, wow, those are beautiful. Thank you so much. I feel like everything you've said has been pure gold. And it's like one of those episodes you could listen to again and again and again and take something else from it, no matter what you're going through. Like, understanding this wisdom and this depth of wisdom from what you've shared today. I'm just so grateful for it. And I know I'm like excited to go back and listen to this over and over. All right. Next segment is Unleashing Ivy, which we've basically done this whole time, where we've just been curious. And these are questions just kind of get to that deeper level, which again, this whole episode's been really deep. But I want to talk a little bit about your experience with money, because you, like you said, you've gotten to, the top of the top with money and then realized what it means in your life. And I've never had tens of hundreds of millions of dollars in my life. So I'm curious. Something I read from one of your posts was something about separating money and wealth. And I'm just curious what you mean by that, and your experience with money. If you were to give, two women maybe perhaps that have a business they started a couple years ago, and some advice on money and wealth. I don't really know what my question is here. I just want you to kind of reflect a little bit about like your lessons with money and the advice you would give us on that.
Yeah. So wealth, the etymology of the word wealth means well-being. And so having a lot of money doesn't necessarily make us wealthy. Okay. I read this somewhere recently, and I think this is beautiful. If having all the money in the world wouldn't change what you do every day, then you're already rich. Now, when we talk about having money, making money, building financial independence, because like you mentioned, right? Like there is a benefit to that. I'm not saying that it's like bad or wrong or not good. I'm just saying that a lot of like the story that we make up about what it's going to do for our lives. Jim Carrey has been quoted as saying, like, I wish I could write a check for $10 million to everyone in the world so that they would know that that's not it. And most people in the world are like, well, then write me that check then, and I want to find out for myself, and I don't blame them, right? I don't blame them. Like, I get it. I was there once. When it comes to money, so let's go back to the power code and the values that I was talking about. If we don't value money, financial independence, like saving and investing, long-term, like having more money at the end of our life than life at the end of our money. If we don't value it in cash, we will never have it in the form of cash. So you take that mom, or I'll share with you an example. This is beautiful, I think. I was at a conference in 2017 in Vegas. One of the companies that I was an owner of, and I was consulting them on all of their marketing and their advertising and their growth and whatnot. They had an event. And so I was one of the speakers at the event. At the end of the event, there was a VIP session, a VIP party, I should say. And, there's dinner and drinks and all this stuff. And so this woman comes up to me and she says, hey, Keala, like, I really loved everything that you shared. I learned a ton. Now, this company, by the way, like, they were promoting a network marketing offer. I was helping them build all of their marketing and sales systems to build that offer. So anyway, woman comes up to me and she's like, I loved everything you shared. I got so much from it. Can I ask you a few questions? And I said, yeah, sure, of course. Hey, what would you like to know? And so she says, I've been doing this now for a couple of years. And honestly, like I haven't gotten much results. I've been thinking about quitting. And as she's talking to me, I start to recognize her. And I'm like, wait, I've seen her in the Facebook group that this company runs. And it's like, I think she has like 7 kids. Like she just recently made a post in there that she has like 7 kids or whatever. So she's talking to me. She's asking me a question. She's telling me about the challenges that she's having. And I say, hey, can I ask you something? She says, yeah. I said, I think I recognize you. Like, don't you have like 7 children? She's like, yep. I said, aren't like the 2 oldest like getting ready to go to college? She's like, yeah, they're graduating. They're twins, yada, yada. And so we get to talking. She's talking. Notice how she lights up. She starts smiling. Her tone has changed, right? And I said, I know this might sound a little weird, but entertain me for a moment. What if I wanted to buy your children off of you? Would you sell them for $1 billion? She's like, no. I said, well, then look at how wealthy you are. And she got teary-eyed, right? And I said, you're judging yourself because you're trying to measure yourself with my ruler. Mm-hmm. But if I measured myself with your ruler, I'm the one who's poor. I don't have 7 children. When I wake up on Christmas morning, it's quiet in my house. Mm-hmm. I don't get to see them stick up for each other, go on their first date, have their first kiss, like, have their first love, go to their prom. Like, I think all of these memories that you've cherished throughout your life, I'll have none of those memories when I die. If I measured myself by your ruler, I'd be the poor one. So I say all that to say this. We all have wealth in our life. It's just hidden in the form of the things that we value most. And if we don't value it in the form of cash, then we won't experience it in the form of cash. That's the secret to financial wealth. Does it make sense?
Yes.
We gotta value that cash, baby. And look at the wealth in your life that already exists.
Ooh, this is beautiful. Because of the law of conservation, because nothing can be created or destroyed, it only transforms.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I can say with confidence that we all have wealth. It's just hidden in the form of what we value. So a question is, then what is the form that my wealth is already in? Like, you both have a podcast. You probably have, interviewed lots of successful, influential people in your podcast. Mm-hmm. So you would likely have wealth through your social connections would be one form of wealth. Mm-hmm. So we're typically going to have our wealth in the form of like mental intelligence, familial, family, vocation, what we do for work, financial, social. There's a handful of things. So one way that you might have wealth is through your social network at the moment. Now, what we can observe is that when we are grateful for the form that it's in, we transform it into the form we desire. Mm. Because when we're experiencing the lack or the missingness of like, I wish I had this, but it's not here. We are living in the ignorance of life. I'll give you an example. Have you guys ever made a law of attraction? When people talk about the law of attraction, you've probably heard of people making like a love list. Mm-hmm. A love list is like, I'm going to make a list of the characteristics and traits of the person that I want to bring into my life, right? Mm-hmm. That I want to attract. Okay, so that's one step. A step beyond that, then, because of law of conservation, a step beyond that would then be to take that list of characteristics and traits and then ask yourself who in your life is currently demonstrating each one of those characteristics and traits. So if you have funny on there, then who in my life is showing up as funny? If you have, beautiful on there or handsome on there, well, who in my life is showing up as that? If smart is on there, who in my life is showing? And what you'll start to find is that nothing is missing. It's just in a form that you haven't recognized, right? It's in a form that we haven't loved. But when we recognize the form that it's in, and we're grateful for the form that it's in, we transform it into the form that we desire. So it can move from this is called the law of the one and the many. From the many come the one, from the one come the many. So we're looking for the one, but the one in this example is hidden in the form of the many. All of those characteristics and traits exist in our life, but they're spread out across, many different people. When we're grateful for the many, we find the one. If we take advantage of the one, we end up with the many. Right? So I say that to say, like, whatever is missing, if you look for where it's already present in your life and you can be grateful for how it's present in your life, you transform it into the form that you desire. So both of you are wealthy, maybe not yet in the form of cash, but if you discover where your wealth is and then are grateful for the wealth that you have, it can become cash.
Love it.
Not magically overnight.
I love that.
With a little bit of work.
Yeah. I love the examples, the in-depth examples, I think, because wherever people are at, they can see themselves in that example. Something within that resonates with them. So thank you for going deep with us, being the woo-woo. I'll say 2 woos. I think you've been there. So a little more woo, my question. Thinking back to you when you were working at the coffee shop, living at home, I mean, just your vocab. Like, you can tell you have done the work, the amount of books and masterclasses, the things that you've consumed. I'm just fascinated by it. What would you offer when you think back, you know, an aha moment you had from maybe a book or something you did that still sticks with you? That was that aha moment. What comes to mind when you think of that?
Years ago, I was reading a book. This has been my favorite book, and much of what I've shared here is from that book. And that author, at the time that I read this book, I didn't know the author. It was referred to me by a friend. The author and I work closely together now. He's become somebody I would call a friend. But in his book, he was talking about the fact that there's a balance in the universe at all times, and he shared this fact, which at first I was like, I got to go look this up and make sure this is real. The Black Plague, the bubonic plague of the 14th century, took tens of millions of lives, right? Anybody living at the time would say that that was awful, horrendous, bad, yada, yada. What most people don't know is that if you fast forward to the 80s and the early 90s, during the AIDS epidemic, millions of people were immune to the HIV virus because of a genetic mutation passed down from their ancestors who survived the Black Plague. So something that took millions of lives also saved millions of lives. So was it good or was it bad? Mm-hmm. Well, it was both. So who am I to question the divine intelligence of the universe? Things will probably never go exactly the way that I would like them to go. But this must be one of my mantras is this must be what's best for me because it's what's happening, right? That there's a greater intelligence at work, and whatever word that people use to define that is fine. But reading that, having that aha moment and just seeing like, oh my God, like it's not good or bad. It's not right or wrong. It's not up or down. Everything is both. For every drawback, there's a benefit. For every benefit, a drawback. It just kind of set me free in life to welcome life's challenges, knowing that on the other end of this, there's something equally and oppositely great. There's a blessing in every curse.
Man, I love that. I wish you could just keep talking to me all day long. You're like the audiobook that I've been waiting to listen to. All right, last question. I'm sad to say it's the last one, but if you could go back and tell younger Keala something at any age, something you really wish he would have heard at that time, what age would you go back to and what would you tell him?
I'm wise enough to know that everything has served me exactly as it unfolded up until this point. Human enough to know that there's also moments in my life that I look back on and I reflect on as like valuable or meaningful pivots in my life. There was a moment when I was standing over my grandfather was diagnosed with cancer. They gave him 6 months. He lived 3 years. One day I heard my grandma screaming. We lived on a property behind her house. I heard my grandmother screaming. I ran to the house and my grandfather was laying on the floor in a puddle of blood. The tumor had burst. His artery had burst, or the tumor had grown into his artery. The artery burst. And so he bled to death, like in front of my grandmother, right? So I arrive on scene. I'm seeing his body laying there in a pool of blood right as the ambulance shows up or whatever. And if I could go back to any moment, I would whisper into that 16-year-old's ear that everything is serving you, even if you don't understand how it's serving you now. That one took me a while to work on, that one took me, that I've revisited that moment many times. And that one took me a while to work on. And today I can see how it served me. But there was several years after that where I didn't have the wisdom that I have today, where that moment plagued me. And I wish I could whisper in that 16-year-old's ear.
Wow. This episode, you, such a gift. Thank you for being vulnerable, for going there, for believing in yourself, doing the work. This is going to touch so many people that within a little over an hour are completely different because of the words that you shared and you going there, opening your heart. So I just want to say thank you from the bottom of ours.
Oh, thank you from the bottom of mine for having me. This is hands down my favorite. I've done a couple of dozen or so podcasts so far. I'm just going to say this. I hope the other hosts don't hear it. But it's my favorite one so far.
Oh.
And I think that says a lot about you because of the space that you held to make that possible. And the depth of the questions that you ask. And so before we wrap up, I would just encourage your audience to go and leave you a review on whatever platform that they're listening on. I don't know that the average person really realizes how much work goes into a podcast and making it great. And you're not just making it good podcast, you're making an amazing podcast, and it takes a lot of work and effort. So the minimum that somebody can do is just leave a short review, which I left a review this morning because I've been listening to a few of your episodes for the last few days. And I left a review this morning. So
those words mean so much. This podcast means the world to me. And when you say it's something that you can wake up and do and not feel like it's work, that's what this is. So you saying that, those words mean so much. And we do care so much for our listeners. And that's just so kind of you. And we're so happy you had that experience because what you shared, like Brooke said, is life-changing. And we cannot wait to keep seeing what you come up with now that you're tapped into this version of yourself that's unapologetically showing up and in this business that's really aligned. It's powerful. You're the type of mentor and person we want to watch and emulate. So we are so grateful for your time. And how we wrap up every episode is with a piece of gold, a quote, whether it's yours or someone else's, that you'd like to sign us off with.
My favorite is I shared it earlier, and I'll leave you with it again. And again, I may be I'm paraphrasing it, right? The master in the art of living makes little distinction between his work and his play, or her work and her play, her labor and her leisure, her mind and her body. She hardly knows which is which. James Michner. So I would encourage the listeners to find something in which they can't tell the difference between their vacation and their vocation. And that's liberty. That's freedom.
This is Gold Ivy signing off.
Listen to your truth and go chase your gold.
Oh my gosh. Yay. That was so much fun. And I feel like I need to go meditate over this episode.
I can't wait to come to Texas. Please keep us posted. We've been talking about retreats and the next move, and you're everything that I don't mean that to sound weird because it kind of did, but when it comes to a mentor and doing retreats, it's resources, it's time, it's energy, and I think it's really important to us who we spend it with and on, and you're someone I can totally see us doing that with, so please keep us in the loop.